next up we have Dana Cardell, with the title of the talk being Nice Markets and Perceptions Code, Circular Markets for a Thriving Circular Nutrient Value Chain, a Market Feasibility and Perception Study.
Thank you very much. The most exciting session of the day, no doubt. Thinking about energies. So our topic is on really thinking about overcoming these market barriers for a thriving circular nutrient value chain. So focusing on a market feasibility and perception study. And as Jason mentioned this morning, involved in this one is myself, Jason. We're very lucky to now have Kerry Tozer on board as our PhD student. We haven't signed off on the final paperwork, so we haven't announced it, but yes, she will be the star of this project. And of course, we have industry partner Gary Leeson from OCP Yates partnering with us on this. So I just want to very quickly step back and remind us about what's the drivers behind this particular project, because as we've heard today in the room, there's a lot of different entry points and perspectives and value propositions. We're coming from different places. So for this particular piece of work, it's driven by, from a fertiliser perspective, that the way we currently source and use fertilisers today is highly unsustainable for a diverse range of reasons and risks. Not least of all the greenhouse gas burden of nitrogen-based fertilisers, the geopolitics around our phosphorus sources globally, the fact that nitrogen and phosphorus are both some of the most inefficient value chains in the world, and of course the waste burden and the increasing costs. So we know this is presenting a huge risk for food security, for the environment and for climate. If we instead think about investing in renewable fertilisers sourced from local sustainable sources in a circular nutrient economy, there are equally a vast amount of sustainability benefits. And these range from food and fertiliser security benefits. I won't have time to go through all of it, and we know a lot of these, but I was thinking, Syed and Gam, how can we think about valuing some of these? How do we value the avoided risk? If we diversify and have domestic sources of local renewable fertilisers rather than relying on risky import markets, how do we value that in an economic assessment? I'd love to think more about that because it's so important. We know there's a whole bunch of water-related benefits, all the climate benefits. I mean, I didn't even know myself until relatively recently that the production and use of nitrogen fertilisers can contribute up to 5% of total global greenhouse gas emissions. That is huge. And so we need to be talking about that more in these conversations, I think, that amount. And a whole bunch of other environmental benefits, and also thinking about local employment and manufacturing, which of course is big in this country at the moment. So the big question we've all been talking about today, what's stopping all of this from happening at scale? Because we know that transitioning to a thriving nutrient value chain, circular nutrient value chain, requires the establishment of new markets, new products, reverse logistics, integration between value chain actors. And the fertiliser industry, for example, need reliable supply chains of uncontaminated raw materials, whether that's urine or food waste or manure or whatnot, and in high volume and on demand. And what we've been hearing from the fertiliser industry stakeholders across the world over the past decade or so is a really similar story. And some of you might remember these anecdotes from me talking from last time, that in Malawi, for example, the only fertiliser manufacturer, we wanted to understand why they weren't interested in using human excreta as a feedstock. And he said, oh, all the sanitation NGOs come to him with a bit of poo here and there. And he says, don't talk to me about a few tonnes of excreta. Come back when you've got 100 tonnes a day, and then we'll talk business. So, okay, there's an economy of scale issue here we need to overcome. In Sydney, frustrated waste farmers were telling us that the waste contractors are dumping the compost, free compost at our farm gate and wondering why we aren't using it. We don't have the machinery to spread it, so it's in the wrong form. And in Sri Lanka, fertiliser producers were telling us that using human excreta, we're not worried about the ick factor, that's just a marketing issue. Okay, so let's invest in that marketing. So what this is all telling us, what's happening there, is that we need to begin at the end. So instead of waste managers spending millions of dollars and many years recovering nutrients and using fantastic technological innovations, and then searching for a market as an afterthought, we need to be talking up front to farmers and other end users in the value chain. I'm going to move faster. hence our project on overcoming the barriers. So at this point, I'm just very quickly going to introduce Kerry Tozer, who I mentioned is our new student, because we were specifically looking for someone who had supply chain expertise and with an environmental ethic, and we think we found that in Kerry.
Let's hope so. Thank you. As Dave mentioned, I have a lot of experience in supply chain across many different industries. And normally in supply chain, you think transport, distribution. Yes, I have experience in all of those areas, but I actually started my experience through procurement and sourcing, and then working from procurement and sourcing to supply planning, demand planning, and then overall planning of the entire balancing act, if you want to call it that. So if we think about, as Dana was saying, looking at what do the end users need, how do we then balance what end users need back up to what producers can actually make and what is actually possible, because that's the only way we're going to find a balance and actually get some kind of circular flow happening.
Great.
Yeah, I'll leave it there.
And next time we talk on this project, we will definitely be hearing Kerry instead of myself up here speaking. So one of the theoretical principles that's going to underpin this project is design thinking, specifically designed for circular use and user-centred circular design, because this is about creating products and services that contribute to the competitiveness of circular offerings over linear consumption. And this could be as simple as being mindful of making it easier and more attractive to transport materials and products between the source, like the toilet or the compost bin, to the final end user. And the Circular Australia's chief circular designer reminds us that we need a frictionless experience for our users and value chain actors. So let's keep that human desirability in our minds when we're designing, as you can see in that diagram. And again, that a circular transition requires, of course, changes in user behaviours, but we have to acknowledge that acting in a circular way is often challenging, more cumbersome, time-consuming, can be more expensive. So we need to design this out up front, because we know in a circular economy that a large part, one of the biggest leverage points is actually in the design phase, redesigning. So let's focus on that. So we need to be what they call empathising with users to develop solutions that truly resonate with the target audience. So I won't go through that, it's just a general design process or methodology, but the important thing is the blue one there up front, the empathising. And so how that will materialise in our project will be around focus groups and interviews with farmers and other fertiliser users and value chain stakeholders in collaboration with Gary at OCP. The design approach also asks us to, how can we think about redesigning our circular business? So we need to start by identifying the impact hotspots in the existing linear fertiliser value chain, from extraction through to end use. Won't go through all of these because I think I'm going to be running out of time, but there's a lot of pointy questions that we can ask, like, does it need to be made in the first place, and can it be a service instead? Well, we know we cannot grow food, we cannot produce any kind of crops without fertilisers, but actually we can supplement that with a service provision model. And ask me about this in the Q&A, because I've got a really nice business case from a Sydney company. So lots of other questions at different stages that we need to be thinking about, including, can it be lighter? Yes, of course. We know a lot of organic material is very low in concentration. There's been a lot of great discussion today moving towards how we can concentrate those nutrients and what else can it be used for. There's so many things I'd like to say here, but I can't because of this 10-minute limit. I apologise. So I'll just move on to very quickly thinking about redesigning the circular nutrient value chain. Jason showed you this image earlier. Some of the questions we'll be asking about are, who are my target end users? What are their values? What drives them? Is it just economics, or do they have other climate or environmental values that are driving them? What do they currently use? What's the price point at which they might shift? Who's going to distribute and sell my products? Is it going on Bunnings shelves or supermarkets, or directly to fertiliser companies as an intermediate product? Thinking about what is my value proposition, and we could get into that a lot more, I think. Do I have a competitive edge, etc. And then again on the supply side, thinking about sufficient supply of raw materials. Where are they located? Is transport and storage viable? What about the quality? Are new collection and treatment systems required? New contracts, etc. Just my final slide here is about readiness. So apologies, I'm talking so fast. So we talk a lot about technology readiness levels. We all know about that. But we want to expand that to think about the readiness of the whole system. So assess transformational readiness. So thinking about that diagram as TRL, obviously. We want to think about as stakeholders ready to transform. What does that look like? Specifically our end users. Is the market ready to transform? Are the policies and political will in place? Who will finance and manage the whole circular value chain? And here's a nice little example of 4 dimensions of a market entry readiness, which in addition to technology readiness shows market readiness, management readiness and commercial readiness. And I think we can expand that even further. So thank you very much.